I'm going to go right now to Joe Tacopina because he has been a defense attorney. He's been a prosecutor. He most recently successfully defended A$AP Rocky in his criminal trial. And I'm going to pick his brain on exactly what that moment would have been like and, frankly, what he would tell his own client if he were representing Diddy.
I mean, I've tried 120 jury trials now, both as a prosecutor and defense attorney. And I'll tell you, it's not about not having reactions. He's a human. You don't want his reactions to be looking to signal a jury. And that backfires sometimes, more often than not, quite frankly. I find jurors loathe that kind of maneuvering because they think that the defendant's trying to influence them. But there's no such thing as a defendant being able to look at a jury, nod in approval or just, shake his head in disapproval. That is called communicating with a jury. And you're not allowed to do that. You will be removed from a courtroom. I mean, it even happened in the Trump trial. Not mine, thank God. But one of the Trump trials where Judge Kaplan in the Southern District said, to President Trump that he was going to remove him because he had been making some, sounds or gestures to a jury. But it's uncommon because most defense lawyers are very firm with their clients about not doing that. Not only because of the ramifications that you just mentioned, what this judge might do, which is horrific, would be instruct the jury that they should disregard the defendant trying to communicate with them, right? Or remove him from a courtroom, even worse. But there's also a concern that a juror is going to pick up on that and be offended by it. No jurors want the defendant to be signaling what they think is right or not right. Get up on the witness stand and testify if you want to communicate to the jury. And so it's even worse if you do that and then don't get up and testify. Jurors will hold that against you. There's a zero benefit to that at all.
That is so insightful to think about how the jurors might, and how, frankly, diverse the reactions from the jurors might be. There's no one size fits all, a fool's errand to predict how they might be. And then you also have this idea, of course, the judge's concern is that they might feel intimidated by this person, and that they might try to change the way they themselves maneuver. But so what if the judge were to remove Diddy from the courtroom for some part of the trial? What would happen?
If he acts in a way that's been disruptive, and he's been warned now twice, and ultimately leads to his removal from the courtroom because he can't control himself, there's no appellate court that's going to upset
Wait, you're
that.
saying warned twice, as in initially telling a defendant generically not to have anything to do with the jury, and then secondly, in the courtroom, making the statement?
Correct. I've been told that this was not the first time that he had been sort of making open gestures, maybe not looking at a jury and doing it, but there was already, my understanding, a preliminary discussion. I think that was more of a generic warning, but this one was direct and on point. And that's enough. I mean, you only need to be warned once. And if he does it again, there's going to be action taken. And that would be the worst thing to happen, because don't forget what this whole case is about. This case is about him being a bad guy. And he's been proven to be a bad guy. He's been proven to be a domestic batterer. He's been proven to be a criminal.
You're saying had he been charged with the domestic violence or the abuse, that would have been something he's already admitted to in opening statements, by the way.
The jurors already heard a lot of not great things about this guy, really bad things about him. I mean, it's just the way he controlled people, the way he abused people. If they now are being told that he's no longer in the courtroom because he can't control himself, or even if they're not being told that, if he's no longer in the courtroom, they'll understand why he's no longer in the courtroom. That is such a death knell to him, because even in this moment, it shows in the serenity of a courtroom, not in a drug-infested freak-off, but here, when your life is on the line, you can't even control yourself. That's a problem. And I think that would be the worst thing that could happen to the defense in this case.
I think you make such an important distinction for everyone listening. The idea of it's not about reacting. He doesn't have to become a cardboard cutout of himself. But it is the attempt or the hint of impropriety, the hint of attempting to engage. And given the testimony that's come in for these jurors, and I'm speculating because I'm not a member of this jury, right? Neither one of us are. But given the testimony that's come in, to your point, of him being violent, of him being an intimidating figure to those who knew him best, if the eye contact is interpreted adding on to what they believe he is and is like, that could be, from the judge's perspective, a reason to think they could be intimidated or even tampered with.
Correct. And I just had a trial, the ASAP Rocky trial in Los Angeles, where I spoke to the jurors after that case. And one of the prosecutors had taken to, it was the oddest thing I'd actually ever seen, but he'd taken to always turning around and looking at the jury and staring at the jury, like literally hardcore staring at jurors during the middle of testimony to see how they were reacting. Multiple jurors told me, and I spoke to about 7 of the jurors after the trial, multiple jurors told me they thought that prosecutor was trying to intimidate them. They found that offensive. They thought he was trying to intimidate them. I don't know if he was trying to intimidate them or that was just his tick or his mannerism that he just stared at jurors. He was staring at me when I was questioning. It was a weird thing, but putting that aside, the jurors are very in tune to what's going on in that courtroom. Don't forget, you have 24 eyeballs, right? You have 12 people. They catch it all, one way or another. It's a New York City jury, and I've tried a lot of, I'm from New York City. They're not so forgiving necessarily when people come up and testify with a bag full of excuses. It's fair game to ask why Cassie didn't go to the police all these years. Instead, she went to a money lawyer X years, a decade later, to get money. She wrote a manuscript and was wanted to sell for $30 million. She wanted to get $20 million.
So you don't buy the expert testimony.
That's a cookie cutter response for everyone. But these are things that people have the right to understand when evaluating someone's credibility.
When you're looking at this case from 10,000 feet back, but with your insight as defense and prosecution, do you think the jurors so far are on board with the prosecution? Are they either clutching their pearls from the sex discussions, or are they wondering, is this what RICO was for?
Listen, you have to be careful about overdoing it with the sex stuff, right? Because if I'm the defense, I'm going to stand up and say, listen, they played you that videotape, that disgusting videotape. And I would embrace the fact that it is horrific what he did to Cassie in that hallway. You have to embrace it. You have to be more harsh on your client than the prosecution's going to be actually when it comes to that tape. But they've played that a dozen times. I think they're going to become a little numb to it. I think the impact of that tape may be dissipating every time they play it. It's not going to have that same effect as when you first see it. I mean, I don't think they have to play that tape a dozen times during the trial. They play it when she testified. They played it in the opening statement, and they played it in summation. But when you play that thing a dozen times, the jurors start getting almost immunized to the effect of it.
So what would you need to see from the prosecution? Say you're a juror, say you're defense. What keeps you up at night knowing that they might drop this evidence or this type of witness might testify?
Look, I think what they're going to do at the end when they tie all this up is say, look, all these acts, the bribing of the witness for the tape, the blowing up Kid Cudi's car, the threatening people, even the Cassie tape, what I would argue if I were the prosecution is, we're not showing you that because he's a horrific guy and he's a domestic abuser. We know he is. Okay, they've admitted he is. We're showing you that, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as the prosecutor, I would say, to show you what happens when you try to escape his orbit, when you try and leave one of his freak-offs. That's what happens to you. So when you say this is voluntary, when the defense stands up and says this is all voluntary, there's your evidence that it's not voluntary at all.
Final question for you, Joe, because I could talk to you all day because your insight really is invaluable. Should Diddy testify? Would you recommend he did?
Get out of here. Okay.
I knew you were going to say that, but I still had to ask you.
We'd be here until Christmas, okay, on his cross-examination. Here's why he shouldn't testify. And I've been marking the flow has told me and said publicly, wild horses can't keep him off the witness stand. And, with his personality, with that sort of king complex that he has, he may want to get up on that stand. But my God, he will have to answer every question about every act that we've heard about in this case. And when that happens, when you put a defendant on the stand, especially this defendant with these allegations, what happens is all the damage you've done to the prosecution's case and all the damage you've done to the witness's credibility by bringing out inconsistent statements or, lies or motives or all these different things, that all becomes background noise. Okay? What's now the focus for this jury is, did he lie? Is he credible? Because if he gets up there and is caught in a lie, or appears to be caught in a lie, or sounds like he's full of it, nothing else matters. It's game, set, and match. It's over. He's getting convicted. Because there's no way he could answer why he did that to Cassie. There's no way he could answer where her gas came from. There's no way he's going to answer the Kid Cudi questions about that car. Okay? He's going to say he didn't do it. If the jury doesn't believe that, then he's lied to a jury, he's perjured himself before the jury, and they'll convict him on that alone. They were cross-examining the witnesses that he didn't do it. If he gets up there and doesn't have an explanation as to why he said those things, and he must be the unluckiest guy in the world, that he was talking about blowing up some guy's car, he decided not to do it, but lo and behold, someone else did it. Like, come on. So he's going to have to answer questions that are unanswerable, that will keep him up there, and more importantly, will shift the focus away from the deficiencies in the prosecution's case onto his credibility, and that is not a risk I would take if I were him. And if I were his defense lawyers, I would tie him down to that chair and not let him get up there. But we'll see. It will be for great, entertainment. Maybe give us another 2 months to talk about this trial. So
Joe Tacopina, really, really insightful. Glad to talk to you, my friend. Talk soon, okay? Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye. Thanks.